Advocacy to capture the entire tiers of education. And that's why we are dealing with a number of education target areas. Next. So as I said earlier, the Djibouti Declaration takes its mandate from the various continental, international commitments like Agenda 2063, the education growth there, the science, technology, and innovation strategy for Africa, the continental education strategy for Africa, CESA, and then various sectoral programs like diversification and also education, science, and technology, innovation at technical and vocational level. We have this CRRF, Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework of the UNHCR adopted in 2016, and then the Global Compact for Refugees in 2018, the Global Refugee Forum, which actually brought different actors at a global level in Geneva. I think this year, so we have high-level meeting, continuation of the 4-year global forum. There are national pledges and regional commitments by different actors that we actually subscribe to the implementation. We are part of these global initiatives as IGAD. We drive some of the agenda. We actually also help the implementation of these commitments of our member states and our regional actors. And then the agreement establishing IGAD, the terrorist strategies and sectoral policies that we develop, all this guide or emphasis on the implementation of the Djibouti Declaration. Next. But what are the core components of the Djibouti Declaration? What was adopted 4 years ago in this very hall, in Djibouti, in Kempinski, this very same place, the Djibouti Declaration was adopted by the first conference of IGAD ministers in charge of education. But what were these key components of the Djibouti Declaration? The first and very important one was regional education quality standards. The ministers committed themselves and urged all the partners as well as IGAD to establish regional minimum education standards and targets on access to delivery of quality education for pre-primary, primary, secondary higher education, as well as activity and education for people with special needs and especially refugees, returnees, and post-community. So the first important commitment that our ministers made in December 2017 was this one, that we address the issue of regional education quality standards. I will tell you about in the implementation of that commitment. Next, regional and skills development for refugees, returnees and host communities, and this calls for local and international partners to provide, sustain, the word, the keyword here is sustain, and integrate the most important instrument and also including refugees and returnees into all levels of education with accelerated access to quality education is very critical. So inclusion is one of the five key priorities of the Djibouti Declaration. Then the regional agenda wants to ensure that refugees are integrated and then integrate education for refugees and returnees into national education systems is available by 2020. Very ambitious goal, but largely achieved, but still to be pursued with vigor because of the challenges that we have encountered in the process of implementation. And then the next one is enhancing the capacity of IGAD and its member states to integrate education for refugees into national education. Madam Fadila honored this morning told us that inclusion is very expensive. Expensive because it requires huge amount of infrastructure, which means you are expanding the absorption capacity, the enrollment capacity, the continuity and sustainability of education, as well as ensuring quality education. Ensuring quality education would require quite infrastructure, including well-trained, adequately trained and equipped teachers, addressing the language barriers, addressing the infrastructure barriers, addressing the facility barriers. And that makes it very expensive, and that calls for enhancing collaboration, enhancing cooperation, and high level of political commitment and will from the member states. And that has been actually one of the major undertakings of IGAD, mobilizing the support of partners, and mobilizing the support of the member states, and then creating a consensus on the need for accelerating inclusion by moving away from a piecemeal approach, a camp-based approach, a segregated approach to education for people that are affected by displacement. So inclusion is one of our key agenda. Inclusion has been one of our major preoccupations over the last 4 years, and it will continue to be one of our key priorities in the years to come. The fourth one is accreditation and certification of education programs. As you all know, refugees are forcibly displaced. When they are displaced, they don't have the documents and the credentials, and then they are moving into a different territory with no opportunity for learning. And then those qualifications and learning outcomes that they have acquired prior to their displacement. That's what we are really pushing our member states to do. Ratify and domesticate the AU Convention on the recognition of studies, certificates, diploma, degrees, and other academic qualifications. Financing, partnership, and monitoring and evaluation. International financial institutions
and the development partners are urged to accelerate the investment in education in the refugees, host countries, as well as in countries to support the sustainable development, the sustainable integration and reintegration of refugees into their countries of origin when they return. This is one. The next one is, build the capacity of the IGAD regional coordination mechanisms, particularly the ministerial and experts committee meetings and structures in charge of education, science, and technology and innovation. Because if we don't have a very strong and coherent strategies for coordination, if we don't have the capacity to coordinate and create the opportunities for facilitation of implementation, it's very unlikely that much can be achieved. So strengthening the capacity of IGAD, strengthening the capacity of member states, strengthening the capacity of other partners and stakeholders is very critical, and that has been actually one of the key pillars of the Djibouti Declaration. Next. But why do we emphasize? Countries are doing in their own ways in terms of providing education and providing certifications and also recognition. But why do we focus on the regional perspective, on the regional approach? What are the rationales? The regional approach is key to ensuring collective response to common challenges. Refugee issues are not a national problem or the problem of countries of origin, problems of countries of destination or hosting countries. These are shared challenges, and then they require shared responsibility and action. So they are very critical. So when organizations like us come into the play, they provide all those opportunities for articulating the common challenges and then mapping out the way forward in the implementation. And then regional approaches also are very vital for pulling resources together, experience and best practice from member states, partners, and all stakeholders. And then they can also help mobilize high-level political will and commitments. So this is very important also. And then regional approaches are vital for coordinating effective implementation mechanisms, monitoring and evaluation, and ensuring sustainability of programs in the long run. Next. And then to provide platforms like this one where we learn from each other, we understand how things are done in the experiences of others. So that's very interventions. And then build partnership. That's very critical and very obvious. When mobilize resources for regional and national interventions and joint tracking of performances. A lot with minimal resources and sometimes with single-handedly. But some of the things that we have achieved include a series of consultative meetings and platforms, both in Africa and beyond. Actually, we have used platforms in the major diplomatic hubs of the world, New York, using the UN General Assembly side events, especially through our partnership with Education Cannot Wait, Save the Children, and many other partners. In Geneva and in many other regional and international levels. Several meetings of member states. I think if we were counting the experts meeting, this is going to be the 7th experts meeting. But we counted the ministerial sessions, and we call it the 3rd ministerial session, but when we actually postponed the ministerial session, we called it the 3rd high-level regional conference on education for refugees, returnees, and host communities for reflection on the Djibouti declarations. And then regular inclusion mapping reports. Inclusion, we actually conduct assessments every year with UNHCR. UNHCR and IGAD jointly assess what has happened in the member states and at regional level, and then we report. So we actually have mapping assessments, and then we brief our member states during experts meeting and ministerial sessions. So we conduct, and then we continue to do that. So enabling policies, policy frameworks and strategies. I have mentioned this one, which was actually adopted in 2008, immediately a year after the Djibouti Declaration was adopted. We have another very important tool that we have managed to get adopted, that is the IGAD Regional Technical Vocational Education and Training Strategy. We have a strategy. It's in the process of finalizing and design. It will be designed and printed maybe during the next ministerial meeting. We will actually include that in our list, but it is done and adopted. And then the next one. Then we have advocacy missions and consultations with refugees. We actually travel to refugee settlement areas. We identify needs, and then we design programs. I will tell you later about teacher training and then how it came about. Training and capacity development of refugee teachers in member states and the certificates that are coming with the training. In 2019, we went to BDBD, one of the largest refugee settlements in Uganda, and also we visited Kakuma Kalobi, as well as Ali Ade Hall in Djibouti. When we went there, we actually got the sense of the need that refugee students and refugee teachers expressed, and that was training. And then based on that, we actually designed the IGAD teacher training program, which is running and which is one of the agenda. Fellow and the other colleagues will give us highlights about the teacher training which we are conducting in 3 countries, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Uganda. And then based on the missions and the fact-finding assessments we conduct, we develop different programs. So then I think one of the most important outcomes of the Djibouti Declaration, and I still refer back to the distinguished representative of ECW, who rightly pointed out that unless we know the costs, we cannot actually think of design a program of support. If the countries do not know their costs or how much it will take them for X number of years, we cannot support them in mobilizing the required resources. It is one thing to have the estimations, but another thing perhaps to have the actual support. But if we don't have the concrete picture of what we need, how much we need, it is very difficult to request or to ask our partners to come in. And I think that's what exactly our partnership with ECW did. In 2018, immediately, I think, after the adoption of the Djibouti Declaration, even before the second conference of our ministers, ECW came down to Uganda and worked with our Ugandan colleagues to develop the Ugandan multi-year costed plan of action. And we were very lucky to have that as a model to help other countries to develop their respective national costed plans of action. The Uganda model, which Madam Fadila has shown us earlier, is one of the good models that we have used, and then the countries now have their costed plans of action. There are one or two countries that are still finalizing or just fine-tuning, but the countries that we actually supported had this advantage of learning from the experience of the other countries that had come up with the costed plan of action. So the national costed plans are the most important contributions of the Djibouti Declaration, and then the most important contributions of the IGAD intervention or regional intervention. Then preparation of forthcoming meetings or events. Just next one. The next one. Next slide, please. Finished? Yeah. So what are the, now as I said, I mentioned it in there, but just I want to give you, to put it in one slot. We have developed the IGAD education policy framework. This year, we have developed the IGAD regional activity strategy, still in the process of being printed. We have developed a roadmap, not the qualification framework. That will be a subject of deliberation for this conference. A roadmap for the regional qualifications framework. The actual regional qualification framework will be developed after we actually review the roadmap and then agree on the milestones in the implementation process. And right now we are in consultation with GIZ we have recruited the program coordinator or program officer for the development of the roadmap. Over there, my colleague Sagal Abdullah. There is another expert, a very senior expert who is working on the continental qualifications framework. He will be on board as of, hopefully as of January, to actually develop the qualification framework for IGAD, and then that will be a process perhaps for the next 6 months. And then the IGAD teacher training program, as I said, it's up and running, and we are training 300 teachers in different skills, pedagogy, ICT, psychosocial support, and this is one of the pillars that has been identified in the Djibouti Declaration: psychosocial support and also entrepreneurship, life skills. So we'll hear from the trainers, from the national coordinators about the lessons that we are learning from the IGAD endeavor in going down to the people, going to the grassroots level with concrete offers in terms of training, building the skills of our teachers. And the logic behind is that if you build the skills of the teacher, then you are building, opening up the opportunities for building the skills of the student, empowering the student. And I think that's what has happened, and that's what we want to hear from our coordinators in the 3 countries, plus the regional coordinator, who unfortunately is not with us, but a presentation will be made by the consulting firm that is ably running this program. And then we have launched what we call the IGAD Regional Universities Forum. Your Excellency, we hold it in Jigjiga. We had one of your colleagues, Professor Rafo Kasu, who graced that meeting by actually inaugurating the first IGAD Regional Universities Forum. We have established the IGAD Regional the IGAD Council of Higher Education. It is composed of 8 universities. The chair is the University of Khartoum. Addis Ababa University is the rapporteur. We have followed the IGAD arrangement for leadership. And then there are 7 universities plus the youngest university, which hosted Jigjiga University, de facto member of the board by virtue of the first hosting of that very important high-level forum. So we have that one. And then I'll not talk much about the IGAD scholarship program because the Executive Secretary will launch it in 2 weeks' time in Nairobi, in Mombasa, inshallah. It is one of the flagship programs, but we are working. And this is actually one of the descendants or the offsprings of the Djibouti Declaration. Because, scholarship could seem like a luxury for many, but for refugees, it's one of the gates for access to quality and inclusive education. If you don't provide opportunities, how would you include refugees into the opportunity that everyone else is benefiting from? So the scholarship is very important. His Executive, His Excellency Dr. Gabayo is very much behind it, and it is his baby who will launch it. So I'll not talk much about it here. I will spare my efforts for the boss announcement later. Next one. Obviously, when you have success, that is what they say. Success has a lot of fathers or mothers. Failure or challenges have very, very limited or none at all. Even if we are actually slow in the implementation and we take the blame, we'll identify some of the challenges that are actually very common that we share with all other partners. We have limited resource and capacity. Despite that, however, despite this program is being run so far by 1 or 2 people, it is actually doing well, but limitations are there in terms of human resource and then resources per se, money and technical support. We have that support, but we use the support that we have very efficiently. Competing priorities. The education sector is one of the least when it comes to priorities because of many other challenges that are coming in terms of the health challenges, in terms of conflict and then rehabilitation and many others. So competing priorities usually impact the pace of your performance. Changing dynamics. We are in a very dynamic region. We are changing every time, and then we are grappling with the reality on the ground. So the changing dynamics impact the pace of your performance, but still we persist, and that's what we are. And then the impact of COVID. We were very much excited right from 2017, 2018. We were moving very, very, very vigorously forward, just like a rocket. COVID came in and then we were locked in for 1 year. But we didn't still stop, but we would have made a lot of inroads if we had known that problem. But the challenge is also coming with an opportunity. So there is now international movement toward this, diverting the education system from, traditional to digital. The digital learning opportunities are coming, but it is very important that we actually use the opportunity that is unfolding. Please. What's happening with the laptop? No, it's the laptop there. It's hibernating. Okay. Okay, anyway, yeah, it's there. The impact of increased displacement, and then lack of understanding of the role of the development. Yes, there's some of our partners hesitate to see what is the value addition of IGAD, apart from the member states. But there are those that have understood how it is important and then they are working with us. Our struggle is to bring more and more partners on board and then demonstrate that we do. And then the regional approach, for the reason that I have outlined there, is very critical. So those are the things that I would like to share with you. Next one. The opportunities are many, just to increase political will, thanks to our member states who understand the role of IGAD and then the role of education for the whole population, but also for refugees, returnees, and host communities. We are doing well. enabling global commitments. There are those initiatives that are around us, and we make use of them. Growing awareness on education, skills and livelihoods as essential elements of the durable solution. If we are not building skills and competences, we cannot think of bringing about durable solutions for displacement, durable solution for the refugee crisis, and also durable solution for our own sustainable development. Strong cooperation between IGAD and its member states. So far, so good. Our partnership with our member states, much more than anything else, is very, very positive, very valuable, and we will continue to keep that momentum. We understand each other, we work for each other, and then that understanding helps us a lot to achieve, and then sustainable support from some of the development partners. There are those partners that have been with us since day one, since 2017, and they continue still to encourage us. You have heard our partner ECW thinking of the way forward. So those are the things that really helped us move the agenda forward. Next. Yeah. So we will continue in answered advocacy, mobilization, and building the capacity, continue mobilizing additional resources, bring additional actors, and ensure sustainable interventions, provide strong focus on mapping skills and building competencies, and strengthening the regional level interventions with a focus on complementarity, synergy, and comparative advantage. We don't compete with our members. I think that's very important. Member says we are not competing with you. We are working with you. We are working for you. We are adding value. So we'll continue doing that. And then I think these are the things that we want to focus. Next. Your Excellency, I think I have to wind down by just outlining what is in the concept note and what are the objectives of this conference. Among others, we want to see where we are, we review the progress, and then see how we can actually enhance the performance. We also review and adopt a roadmap for the IGAD regional qualification framework. This is very much important for us. Once we get your go-ahead and also endorsement of the plan of action, and then we will move to the next step of actual development of the regional qualification framework. And then next one, yeah, this one is really very clear. It goes without saying, we learn from each other. We exchange experience and practices from the different countries, the presentations that will be made by our members. And then the scholarship program, I'll just pass, and this is, as I said, one of the items that will be handled by the Executive Secretary. Next one. And then update on the status of the IGAD Regional Teacher Training Program. The team is here, as I said, they will give us highlights, and then deliberate on the impact of COVID-19 on education and how we can actually foster regional cooperation to continue to tackle. We have tackled it, we are tackling it, we continue to tackle it because the threat is still with us. So we need to really see how we can actually bring synergy in terms of tackling the impact of COVID-19 in the education sector, which is one of the most affected. Next one. And then the outcomes are very clear. I think common understanding, recommendations, adoptions of plans. By the end of the conference, we will present to you a very brief plan of action for the next 5 years, 2022 to 25. And then, we could start from 21, but we are ending 21, and then we have at least the remaining 4 years. So we'll just agree on what are the key priority interventions at regional level that we bring all the member states together. And then I think this is also an advocacy platform that we want to appeal to all partners, both here and elsewhere, to understand the work we are doing, to understand the value of the regional intervention, and then support the regional intervention which means supporting member states in diversified form. I think, Your Excellency, Mr. Chair, I will wind up here, and I will leave the floor for discussions, questions, and reflections, if any, to your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kabada, for a very nice and very informative presentation. Since the adoption of the Djibouti Declaration on the various issues, but particularly for our session, the education part, a lot has been achieved. No wonder that the challenges were immense. We thank you very much for doing this nice work at IGAD, and we recognize, Ethiopia recognize the hard work that you are in. Also, we note that we seriously take, as the government of Ethiopia, we seriously take how we normally conceive the idea of regional integration, particularly the role education can play, be it with our immediate neighbors, who we call them brothers, also with other diplomatic relations that we create with other countries. Education for us is not just the one that we normally put it into the perspective. We see it as an instrument for bringing much broader objective for the prosperity of Africa and the prosperity of our specific IGAD nation states. With this note from my side, the floor is open now for inputs to what the presentation, that has just been made, and also to peculiar experiences that you have had during the past 4 years as related to IGAD declaration, the IGAD Djibouti declaration on education related to refugees, returnees, and host communities. Next, I'll be recognizing those of you who want to intervene. Over there. Yeah. All right, let's start with you and we'll continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You hear me? Yeah. My name is Banai. I'm from Ethiopia. I work in Addis Ababa University. I would like to thank IGAD for the opportunity given to us. I have a colleague here to come over here and share our experiences and also learn from this beautiful forum. I appreciate the presentation, Dr. Kabada, very nice, as usual. I share all the issues that you raised except one. We have never considered IGAD as a duplication or as an institution which is competing. We have never had this kind of experience. It is an enabling institution. It is an institution that tries to create a platform for member states to come to work together to a comparable standard. Having said this, let me raise some of the questions I have. In the morning session, and in the early sessions, I think the UNHCR representative was reporting about the statistics, but I was wondering that early childhood education is falling between the cracks because I didn't hear anything about it. This is a period which is critically important for later developments. IGAD is supposed to give due attention to education during the early years. So what's happening to these people? The other one is the idea of inclusion. Inclusion, as the ECW representative said, it's very complex, it's very challenging, and yet it is very helpful. There are lots of debates as to how to do this inclusion. There is a segregation approach, the traditional one, and the inclusion approach, which is the most recent one, is most preferred because it is cost effective. But there is its own disadvantage as well. When you bring the child into the host communities and attend irregular classes, that physical integration alone doesn't help. We need to start inclusion from the policy down the road to the classroom environment, the curriculum, the national plans. Otherwise, putting the child into the classroom without addressing its needs within that community doesn't ensure proper integration. So how are you, I know, being appreciative of the challenges, how are you planning to address these kinds of inclusion? Or are you simply considering putting the child in the same classroom as an inclusion? The other point is about the contents of education. See, refugee children are exposed to different kinds of traumatizing experiences. There are different kinds of psychosocial challenges. Building on cognitive development, it doesn't address the personality development of the children. That is the major problem of current schooling. Current schooling is not preparing children for the 21st century because it is not holistic in its approach. So the kind of inclusion we're talking about, how far holistic it is in terms of addressing the psychosocial needs of the children. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time. The last point I want to raise is the capacity building training. I appreciate IGAD is providing training to the teachers. You have already trained about 300 teachers. I have two concerns here. What about the educational leaders? Don't you think it is more appropriate to begin with the leaders and then go to the teachers? Otherwise, if the leader is not trained in terms of the nature of refugee education, as an IGAD, do you think it is your mandate to train? Don't you think it is more appropriate and has multiplying effect Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kabedi. My name is Biaranga Godfrey. I'm a Senior Emergency and Field Coordinator, the Department of Refugees, Republic of Uganda, in the Office of the Prime Minister. Doctor, thank you for the presentation, and I'm very pleased about the achievements and the milestones. But I was looking at the opportunities, and where you are talking about the enabling commitments globally, and we talked of the Global Compact. Do we have accountability on this? Have we realized some of these commitments, or we expect them from the presentations from the member states? Because this would prove a way forward. If commitments were made, have we realized some? Don't you think IGAD as a regional bloc needed to have accountability about this. Thank you. Maybe the last and final intervention before I take it up back to Dr. Kabede to reflect on some of the points. If not, I think we have a number of issues and questions to be a little bit elaborated, raised by Dr. Belai from Addis Ababa University, and also my brother from Uganda. Oh, Johannes? All right, Dr. Kabede.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Belai and Mr. Birhonga, for the questions. I think these are very, very relevant reflections. I'll try to answer, but some of them might actually come during the discussions. So I'll take you through. Prof, as you said, first I thank you very much for your recommendation, and then I also agree with you that we are not competing, we are complementing the service of just to highlight that this is the issue. So I agree fully with you that we are standing in solidarity with our partners and filling gaps when they exist, both be that in policy, strategy, or in intervention. So just, raising a rhetorical question that we are such and such and we do that. With regard to the questions, I fully understand why you brought us some of these apparently looking neglected issues, priorities. I would like to refer you to this small policy document which answers your first question about early child development and education. If you see that is one of the first priority in the policy, that we work on promoting pre-primary education and early child development. So it's not falling into the cracks. It is captured in our policy document. And then if you see in the key priority in the policy measures that we have recommended to all member states and partners, we want us to ensure access to quality pre-primary education in all member states, and then develop adequate infrastructures and create enabling teaching, learning environment for children and kids, and then encourage school learning, feeding, and provide. So there are a number of policy recommendations that are captured. So to be brief, it's not presented anywhere, but it is there. So I can assure the August House that that is one of our priorities. And integration, we are not talking about mere physical juxtaposition of students. We are not talking about bringing students together for the sake of including them in one classroom environment or setting. In the first place, we are very much aware that there is cultural and social or psychosocial difference, even emotional difference between students from the host community and students from displaced communities. And when we talk about integration, when we talk about inclusion, we are talking about addressing all those issues that require serious attention to make students feel at home rather than feel at school. And then I think that's where, when we talk of the teacher training, we are building skills that are relevant for responding to the psychosocial needs of students. Can we do that adequately? No, we can't. Can we just show the way? Yes, we can, and we have started that. So we are trying to talk about the holistic needs of students in general, but students in the refugee settings, in displaced circumstance in particular. So when we talk about inclusion, as I said earlier, has, at least for me, two dimensions. One is creating the necessary environment for including students into an environment. The second is the policy dimension. And the policy dimension is not only about the political commitment, but also the psychosocial understanding of the emotions. You know, we go to communities and we listen to people, and then there are students and parents that do not want to go to school because they have been traumatized. There are students that do not want to see another student because they are coming from different communities. So that diversity, that difference will make it challenging to bring together, unless we address some of those soft dimensions of the problem, like the emotional, the psychological, and the trauma. So the issue is very critical. We want to address it in a comprehensive and holistic way. We cannot address it in one go and through one approach only. We involve and invite and encourage our partners, member states, to talk about this, work on this, and then address it from a holistic point of view. So that's why even we are preparing our teachers to have not only pedagogical skills or subject matter skills. You know, when I went to IGAD here and Hall, they requested two types of training. One training is subject matter, like we have been away from school for 20 years, 25 years, 10 years, 15 years, and that we are unable to comprehend the changing scientific dimension, like mathematics, the new scenarios, the chemistry, physics. So we want to train in subject matter. Well, that's one question they request. So give us subject matter in biology, in chemistry, in physics, in mathematics. Give us training. That's one. The second one, they requested that give us an overall methodological training, a pedagogical training that will qualify us to talk to students and then understand the changing classroom and the changing school community scenario. That was very true. So we have started. We have started somewhere, and then we are now actually using an eclectic approach to train teachers. We will see how this can work, and then we can scale that up. I think the scaling up is very important, but it might not happen at the scale that we really wanted. But the school integration, the integration of refugees into national education system has different dimensions. We are aware of those dimensions. And then I think your other question about content, you know, as I said, we are focusing much not on the scientific content of learning and teaching, but on the methodology, on the approach. So it is more of a holistic approach, as eclectic approach, and I think the trainers would actually report to us what they have received from the teachers and the community during their assessment, and then what they have brought for the training module, what has gone into the training module. I think this leads me to your question, whether IGAD is the most appropriate body, or we should have left it to the member states. We are leading, we are not training. There's the countries and the institutions in the countries that are engaged in the training, and this is a capacity of those institutions that we are building, and then I think we are showing them a different dimension of regional approach to training and education. In that sense, we are in the right place, and I think we are the most appropriate one, but the job is done by the member states, the job is done by the institutions within the member states. Our role is just to catalyze, to bring the resources together, bring the expertise together, and then create a consensus among the national providers and then the policymakers, we have different layers of actors there. We have the Ministry of Education, we have the Refugee Agency, we have the Institution of Higher Learning, we have the Training College, and then they come together, and then also there are partners, they come together. We have a national coordination body, they work in tandem, and then they design the curriculum, they design the timing, and then they deliver the training service. So we are right, we are appropriate lead body, but we are not doing the jobs of our member states and the institutions of teacher training or universities. Kafalay and then I think Moses will give us highlights later as to how they come up with that approach. All right. I think the next question by Godfrey. Godfrey, yes, the opportunities I think are very important, especially the continental and the regional initiatives like the GRF, the GCR, and then the CRRF. They provide us the framework. They also provide us the opportunity to partner with like-minded institutions and stakeholders. So it's up to us actually to use that. What are the commitments and the obligations of member states? I think you will have to present that one during the member states presentation, and then we'll capture the regional level commitments that were made ourselves in terms of providing policy spaces. Otherwise the question is very valid, but I think we should guide our presentation of the member states during the course of today. Chair, thank you. If I have not answered, I will be available for bilateral.
Thank you very much for reflecting on the issues raised by Dr. Bala and Ifri. Dr. Kabada has touched on all of the issues. I just want to take a minute and a half probably to wrap up this session. I think we have to finish. It's already 5 past an hour. On the methodology we have to follow for refugees and returnees, then it has to be scientifically informed. Yes, it's not enough that we expand the school facilities and celebrate that we are admitting refugees to our schools. The refugee community have been exposed to a number of challenges, including the psychological trauma they have faced while leaving their home country and also while staying at the host nations. So we have to be cognizant of that problem while designing the curricula for refugees and returnees. That's an important point I think addressed by Dr. Kabel. But that has to be scientific, that we cannot say this is a one-fits-all recommendation from any of us. Second, yes, we need leaders and school leaders, school directors, and the school management team as a whole and the whole government system that really understands the refugee issue, the returnee issue, and the host community issue, and how to handle education in the middle of this factor is an important point that has to be addressed. But that would be left to the member states, that will be left to specific regions and specific areas where the refugees and returnees are hosted. I think we have a consensus that IGAD will be serving as a facilitator, will be serving as a multiplier, but will never replace our role as a host nation and as also responsible nations to handle the refugee and return education. This is, for me, my last word. This issue of refugees and returnees and host community is something that we have to seriously take it and work on. But this is something that we have to have an end to it as well. We cannot live with refugees and returnees issue for eternity. We have to have continent Africa or Mama Africa where the amount of refugees would be handled, and the amount of refugees will no more be an issue for us. We know the source of the problem, and we have to work on the source of the problem. Our forefathers in 1963 in Addis have declared, unless we have a unified Africa, will continue to live with such challenges. So we have to go back to the source, and we have to see the solutions from the source as well. Why we're having this many refugees in Africa? Why we stick to the artificial boundaries we were given with our former bosses? We have to challenge that, and we have to go further. But in the meantime, in the short term and medium term, we have to work on refugee and returnees issue, and we have to make sure that these refugees and returnees are not burden, rather chances for the host nations, and also chance for an opportunity for a prosperous Africa, in the one that we would like to see by 2063. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabarin. Thank you, those of you who have intervened. With this, we'll come to the end of the first session and presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Excellency, for also highlighting those very critical preventive and also remedial efforts to address the problem from the roots. I think one of the challenges that we are facing in this continent is the root causes of the conflict, the root causes of the displacement. I think it is an assignment to all of us in the principles of the charters of the AU, the construct of the AU, and I think of all the international instruments. Thank you very much for that addition, Your Excellency. I want to be guided by the chair if this is time for lunch. Facilitators, is it time for lunch, or we break for lunch and then reconvene? What time is it now? Yeah. Yes, I think, Sagal, is it time for lunch? We break for lunch and then come at exactly 2:30 for the country presentations. Yeah, the lunch coupons will be distributed. Yeah. Thank you very much for offering us this lunch, and then we meet at exactly 2:30 after lunch. And we're running behind the schedule for the country's presentations, but I think we can make that up by staying a bit longer in the afternoon and the evening. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. They'll show us where to go for the lunch, and then we come back. Thank you.